Minwei Qi Nan. Volume 1, Strive to be his man. Chapter 1. One day, transmigrated into someone's wife. Qin Mian opened his eyes and found himself lying in a leaky thatched cottage, which is a problem. That's because he was sure he was in his family's villa beforehand. Moreover, there was another man lying next to his leg in the quilt. You. Who are you? The man sat up quietly, his upper body was exposed as he looked at Qin Mian for a moment before he carried a worn-out bowl with a cracked corner from the low table at the head of the bed. The man said in a muffled voice, "Wife, drink water." Qin Mian's eyes rolled backwards as he promptly passed out. Qin Mian had a dream that he became a woman. Within the burst of suanas and the beating of the gongs and drums, he was forced into a sedan chair to marry a man. Note: sauna is the Chinese equivalent of oboe /. He was scared to the point that he had cold sweat and had to pull his robes apart. As soon as he saw a flat chest, he was relieved and laughed at himself. "I'm scaring myself, it's just a dream." Suddenly, he felt something was wrong. How could his clothes be so worn out? And how could he be so tawny and thin, just like a child of 11 or 12? He raised his head hastily and found that he was in a thatched cottage. He jumped to the ground from the bed in fright. The thatched room was only about 7 to 8 square feet in total area, with 2 of the walls made of clay and the other 2 walls were merely made of wood, hay, and old cloth. There was nothing else in the room except for a wooden bed, a low table at the head of the bed and 2 wooden boxes. Oh, there was also red paper cutouts pasted on the wall, which were big double happiness character. There was no mirror, but when Qin Mian looked at his little arms and calves, he could be sure that this body was not his at all. A chill crept up his spine. What's going on? He clearly remembered that he had been in his family's villa beforehand. Right, he was pushed by Qin Lian. He had rolled down the stairs and hit his head. Very suddenly, he had an incredible thought: did he died and reincarnated in someone else's body? Qin Mian dared not to believe it. He pinched himself hard, but the scene in front of him didn't change at all, as if it was laughing at him coldly. He was completely dumbstruck. After a moment of stupefaction, he quickly looked at the pulse point on his left wrist. There was a small, unremarkable black mole there. With the thought in his mind, a familiar mysterious space appeared in front of him. He breathed a sigh of relief which eased his tense face a lot. He walked towards the door with great strides and felt that his feet pressed painfully on something hard within 2 steps. He looked down and saw a pair of skinny dirty feet without shoes. The ground was full of potholes. It was no surprise that his feet got pressed painfully on something hard. Looking around, he found a pair of straw sandals by the bed. They had been so well worn that they were already half black. Under the bed were 2 other pairs of straw sandals, one big and one small, both new. He put on the new straw sandals without hesitation. When he opened the door, he found that the thatched cottage was built in a yard. At a glance, he could tell that the structure was a later addition. A foul smell assailed his nostrils. He could not stand it, so he covered his nose. Oink! A pig in the opposite pigsty looked up at him before lowering its head. Its dirty mouth dug the vegetable leaves scattered in the rice straws. There was a big pile of shit next to those few vegetable leaves. Qin Mian's mouth twitched as he walked to the tightly shut main house. He pushed open the door and called out. The unfamiliar voice was a little hoarse. "Is anyone here?" No one answered. He raised his voice and called out again. He could not help frowning when he didn't get an answer. This body was too poor as it was aching, limp and weak. He merely shouted a few words, but it was like he had already exhausted all his strength. He couldn't help wondering if this body was sick. Looking to the right, there was a closed entrance door. The entrance door was made of several planks nailed together where he could faintly see gleam of light appearing from the cracks between the planks. Qin Mian opened the entrance door and walked several steps to escape the stink of the pigsty. A gust of wind came gently, the fresh air made him greedily take a few mouthfuls of air. On the left side of the sky hung a half-risen sun, making it difficult to tell whether it was morning or dusk. The sun shone on the green verdant trees which reflected the rays of light, and with the sway of the wind, they looked like glittering gold. Several chimneys were erected in the rows of houses not far away from each other. The smoke from the chimneys spiraled up to the sky. Looking up, there was a large field in the distance where green crops being blown by the wind, setting off long green waves. In the field, the farmers bent their backs and went busy, the oxen swung their tails while eating grass on the ridge. Further away was a tall green mountain with green trees stacked on top of each other. Faint smog curled around the mountainside which made it look like a fairyland. From unknown direction came a cacophony of noises which were mixed with the cries of cattle and sheep and the barking of dogs. It contrarily reflected the tranquility of this village even more. What a nice little village! If it wasn't for the fact that Mian hadn't figured out his situation yet, he wouldn't mind strolling around the village. He had lived in the reinforced concrete forest for a long time. This small village was just what he liked. At this time, an old woman of about 60 years old came from behind a pile of haystacks with a basket on her right arm, containing some wet clothes. As soon as Mian saw the old woman's hair bun and ancient clothes, his heart thumped. Could it be that he not only reincarnated in someone else's body, but also went in an ancient era? He wasn't sure how to speak to this person, and thus he was debating whether to go up and test out the old woman, but the old woman suddenly stepped up and came straight to him. Her expression was very bad and her two thin lips were tightly pursed, showing a thread of mean aura. "Since you have woken up, why don't you feed the pigs? Just standing here to watch the scenery, ah." Mian internally said, "I really am watching the scenery." He saw that the old woman entered the courtyard he had just come out of. He did not know what's the relationship between him and the old woman was currently. He had to pinch his nose, and as he walked in, his stomach rumbled like thunder booming. He was hungry. She was about to hang the clothes on the rope to dry, but when she heard that there was no movement behind her, she turned her waist and glared as she roared with rage, "Eldest, are you dead? Ah! Go feed the pigs quickly." Note, she basically meant Mrs. or wife / eldest son or what eldest member of the family. Mian thought. Except for the old woman, he was the only one here. Even if he didn't want to endure the old woman's yelling, she was definitely referring to him. So, he could only sigh and walk there. She glanced at him, "Feed the pigs." "I can't." Mian smiled gently, "I have to trouble you to teach me how." She's face sank as soon as she heard it. She looked around, picked up a worn-out broom and whipped it toward Mian's body. "You can't? Can you eat or not? Are you trying to piss me off?" Mian was shocked. He reached for the broom while internally wondering whether this old woman was sick to hit someone even before saying a word. But he forgot that his body was just that of about 11 to 12 years old at most, with a very poor health, so he was severely overpowered by the old woman. The pain on his hands made his grips loose and his bum fell on the ground. "How dare you fight back? We should return you." She raised the broom and whipped at him again. Mian's face coldly darkened, but he didn't have the strength to dodge. He internally thought, "What a bad luck, I'm afraid I'm going to suffer for a bit." The old woman looked old, but she was very strong. The pain that he was expecting didn't come onto Mian, but he saw She's face frowned unsightly while looking behind him. Mian looked back and saw the broom was gripped by a tall man. He seemed to have seen this man somewhere before. "Mother, he is my wife." Mian coughed violently. No wonder he felt that he had seen this man before. It was precisely this man who had handed him water and called him wife last night. End chapter. Minwei Nan. Chapter 2. A little dispute at breakfast. This man looked to be in his early 20s, tall and strong with a straight disposition. He was wearing a grey open-slit work robes on his upper body, a black belt tied in a simple knot on his waist, a pair of pants of the same color rolled up to the calves and a pair of old straw shoes on his feet. This man was rather handsome. He had waist-long black hair which was simply bundled up with a mere blue cloth and a wooden hairpin. His thick eyebrows were slanted towards his sideburns, his eyes were bright and deep. Due to being basked in the sun often, his skin was bronze which made him look even more imposing. However, there was a scar on his left cheek, extending from the inner corner of his left eye all the way to the bottom of his earlobe. The wound looked old but the scar was very obvious. It made him seem somewhat intimidating. He was this man's wife? Mian coughed and stood up. His knees were a little soft that he involuntarily sat back down. That man had sharp eyes and agile hands. He tightly held Mian's arm in one hand. Mian felt like a chick being picked up. He took a look at the man but he didn't say anything and only murmured in his heart that this man was too tall, almost 2 heads taller than his present self. At the same time, he further confirmed that this body that he possessed was ill and that this kind of weakness was not normal at all. Du Shi's face eased up as she put down the broom. Wai Lang, mother is angered by him. He said he couldn't feed the pigs. What's this if not to piss me off? Manage your wife properly. Note, Wai Lang refers to the first son / Mian didn't make a sound. He could feed the pigs. He lived in the countryside with his maternal grandparents from birth to the age of 15 where they farmed, raised chickens and pigs at home so he could do it all. But now that he was in a strange environment and had no memory of the original owner of this body, he didn't know what the pig feed was, where it was and how much it was to be fed. If he did something wrong, it would lead the old woman to be suspicious of him, which was not good. As it was well known, people in ancient era were very superstitious. If someone found out that the body had changed its core, he might have to die again. Therefore, he said directly that he could not, even if that was not exactly true. It's just that the old woman thought he was deliberately looking for trouble. LIAN took a look at Mian who, contrarily enough, didn't look displeased. Without saying a word, he strode away. Du Shi gave Mian a fierce look. Mian did not fear her. He silently thought about what to do next while he wondered about this man who walked in a breezy way. He felt unspeakably out of sorts. He did not know exactly what was wrong. After a while, the man came up with a bucket, went to the pigsty and quickly poured the rotten vegetable leaves and some kind of grass in the bucket into the trough. Du Shi's face was a little blue but her tone was as warm as possible. Wai Lang, you are an adult man, why would you want to do this thing? Mian was angry as he thought, he's a man but I'm not. LIAN didn't say a word as he put the bucket on the ground. He led Mian into the thatched cottage and sat him down at the edge of the bed. Mian was taken aback by his action. He hadn't gotten the chance to speak yet when he saw the man go out and bring in a basin of water. He took a brand new cloth towel from a rope tied behind the door and put it in the basin. Then, he also sat down at the edge of the bed with 3 fists distance from Mian and looked at the opposite wall with no expression and kept silent. Thank you. Mian thought to himself. He kept his mouth closed. Despite their extraordinary relationship, he could not find anything to dislike about this man. He didn't say much and used the cloth towel to wash his face and hands. When he was about to pour the water out, the man took the basin and washed Mian's face and hands silently. Mian got a little uncomfortable. 2 men sharing a washcloth was a bit. Let's have our meal. After LIAN washed his face, he took the basin in one hand, stood up and looked at Mian. Mian nodded and followed him out. The man threw the water on the corner of the wall and put the basin beside the well before he walked into the main house. Mian followed. At this time, several people came in from the entrance door, men and women all dressed in ancient costumes, carrying farm tools, walking and talking at the same time. Those several people were followed by 3 small children. Speaking of this, let's talk about the Lei family. The head of the Lei household, Lei Daqiang, was 40 years old and married to Du Shi, 38 years old. The eldest child of the Lei family was LIAN. He was 22 years old and his wife was precisely Qin Mian, just 14 years old. The second child, Lei Xiangren, was 21 years old and his wife was Zhao Shi. Their eldest son, Lei Dabao, was 5 years old and the youngest son, Lei Xiaobao, was 3 years old. The third child, Lei Xianji, was 19 years old and married to Jianxi and had a daughter named Lei Xingxin, 2 years old. The fourth child, Lei Xiangli, was 17 years old and had yet to marry. The fifth children were a pair of twin, Lei Xiangji and the only daughter Lei Chuntao, 15 years old. At this time, it was precisely Lei Daqiang and the others who came in. Except for Lei Xiangji, the rest of the family were all present. Lei Xiangren put down the farming tools and upon seeing that Qin Mian's face looked a little strange, he called out eldest sister-in-law. Qin Mian, who had just transmigrated, was feeling uneasy. He was scared to be perceived as not normal, so he did not look at them directly and only nodded vaguely. Now that he had transmigrated, it seemed impossible to transmigrate back. Somehow, he had this vague in mind. Unbeknownst to anyone, he had a magical space. With this magical space, as long as he kept his wits about him, it wouldn't be a problem to live a good life. But at the moment, all he could do was to remain calm. Zhao Shi and Qianxi went to the well to draw water for the men to wash. While drawing water, they talked in low voices with strange smiles on their faces. Consciously or unconsciously, their eyes also drifted to Qin Mian from time to time. Qin Mian didn't care. There were 2 old-fashioned square tables for 8 people in the main hall. Seeing Lei Tie sitting at one table, he went to sit on the empty seat beside him and secretly took note of Lei Tie's reaction. Lei Tie glanced at this extraordinary wife of his. He had no expression, but there was a touch of surprise in his eyes, yet he didn't say anything. Erlang's wife and San Lang's wife still haven't come in to help. When Du Shi came out of the kitchen and saw Zhao Shi and Qianxi chatting there, she was so furious that she shouted coldly with arms akimbo. Note, Erlang refer to the second son, San Lang refer to the third son. Coming. Zhao Shi and Qianxi immediately put away their smiles and sped up washing their hands. A while later, all the people outside came in after they had washed up. Upon seeing Qin Mian sitting at the men's side, their footsteps faltered at the same time. They looked at each other in dismay. The father, Lei Daqiang, didn't speak as he went to sit down at the head of the table. As a matter of fact, he was only in his early 40s, but he looked very old because of the hard work all year round that he looked like he was about 60 years old. When the men saw that their father didn't speak, they also took their seats at the table where Qin Mian was sitting. After a moment, Du Shi, Zhao Shi, and Qianxi came in with the dishes. As soon as Du Shi saw Qin Mian, her expression changed. Restraining her displeasure, she motioned to the other table. Wai Lang's wife, are you confused? Your seat is here. Both Zhao Shi and Qianxi wore a face that looked like they were waiting to watch a dispute unfold. It was enough for them to be happy when the eldest son married a man as his wife, whom after just a few days of marriage had started to work with their mother-in-law, as it gave them something to talk about for several days. Lei Chuntao's eyebrows wrinkled. She took a dish from Du Shi's hands and put it on the table. When she went to pick up another dish, Du Shi did not let it go. She looked up and found that her mother's face was taut and her eyes were full of anger as she stared at their eldest sister-in-law, as if wishing her eyes could be turned into 2 needles to poke him a few times. Qin Mian saw that the other table was full of women and children. He laughed in his heart. Without changing his expression or talking, he turned to look at the man beside him to see how he would react. This man's attitude would determine the direction of his future plans. Lei Tie didn't look at the person beside him, but he pressed Qin Mian's leg, not letting him get up. He said dully and succinctly, "My wife will sit here from now on." Du Shi put on a straight face and slammed the dish on the table with all her strength. Qin Mian thought to himself that this plate was quite sturdy, that it hadn't broken under such harsh treatment. Du Shi allowed no doubt as she said, how can this work? All the daughters-in-law are sitting at this table, no matter which family, the rules are the same. Why Lang's wife should sit here? Lai Tie didn't loosen his hand and he spoke dully but determined, just sit here. Mother, proper decorum should be observed between men and women. Wouldn't it be improper for me to sit there? There is even an unbetrothed maiden amongst them. Qin Mian pushed away Lai Tie's hand and smiled at the old woman. He didn't know which dynasty this was, so he didn't dare to say that men and women with 7 years difference could not be seated and eat together. The young maiden didn't have her hair bound, so he knew that she was not yet married. Du Shi's face was red with anger. The reason why she wanted Wai Lang's wife and the other 2 daughters-in-law to sit together was to put him in his place, but she forgot that her daughter had reached the marriageable age. Although Wai Lang's wife was effective her sister-in-law, he was still a man after all. Thinking of this, she couldn't say anything against it even though it angered her. She only gave Qin Mian a fierce look when others were not paying attention. She looked at the plate of steamed buns in her hand that was going to be sent to the men's table. She wanted to put 2 less, but she was afraid that the men who was the family's main labor forces would not have enough to eat, so she had to give up on this idea. It made her hate Qin Mian even more. Zhao Shi and Qian Shi were secretly disappointed that they didn't see a good drama. They were a little puzzled though. The other day, the eldest sister-in-law looked timid and cowardly. Today, he was calm and dared to talk back to Du Shi. Remarkable awe. Was he relying on Wai Lang's support? End chapter. Minwei Qi Nan. Chapter 3. Magical Space. That's enough, I'm hungry. Lai Daqiang thumped the table with his hand and spoke. Du Shi was very gentle when she replied to Lai Daqiang, then I won't say anything anymore. Let's eat. Qin Mian looked at the table where there was a plate of steamed buns and a pot of vegetable soup that was so clear that he could hardly see oil on the surface. Although he had expected that the living standards of ancient peasants could not be too high, it still surprised him. While he was still in a daze, each of the men had taken a steamed bun and ate it with big bites. They ate very fast, taking only 2 to 3 bites of the steamed bun before they went to get the second one. Suddenly, a steamed bun was stuffed in his hand. Qin Mian turned to Lai Tie. Lai Tie didn't look at him but ate his own steamed bun in silence. Qin Mian watched the other people devour food like wolves. However, this man beside him hardly looked conspicuously vulgar, though he was also eating fast. Once again, Qin Mian felt out of sort at the bottom of his heart. He turned to the other table. The women ate the same things as the men, but their soup was thinner with only a few clear vegetables floating in it. His stomach tightened again. Qin Mian took a bite of the steamed bun and frowned. He was not a man who couldn't bear hardships. When he lived with his maternal grandparents, he usually ate steamed cornbread or steamed bun and steamed filled bun for breakfast. Later, life became a bit better when he received the Qin family's fortune as the Qin's heir. On top of that, he inadvertently obtained a magical space which could be used for planting. Then, he began to like studying and exploring gourmet food. Afterwards, when he graduated, he became a photographer of food programs. Still, he didn't know how this steamed bun was made. It was rough enough to scrape his throat. Yet, he continued to eat the steamed bun and drink a bowl of soup, which then made his stomach more comfortable. After eating breakfast peacefully, Lai Daqiang began to arrange today's work with the laboring men within the family. Now, it was the time when the weeds were growing crazily and the grass in the paddy field should be pulled out. Meanwhile, Du Shi arranged work for the daughters-in-laws. Zhao Shi was to carry water and vegetables, Qian Shi was to cut grass and feed pigs, Qin Shi was to go up the mountain to cut firewood, while she herself will look after the children at home. As for Lai Chuntao, this girl needed to be pampered so she could find a good family to marry in. At that moment, the sun was high, so she shouldn't go out to bask under the sun and only needed to embroider in the room. My wife has to take a rest. Lai Tie began. Du Shi's face became dark again as she stiffly said, as someone from a peasant family, how can he be so fragile? How many days has he been taking a break from his duties? It's been causing delays in the houseworks. Qin Mian was very clear about this. He himself was not familiar with this place and could not leave the Lei's residence for the time being, so he could not quarrel with Du Shi now. Just as he was about to respond, Lei Tie said again, he needs to rest. Ignoring Du Shi, Lei Tie then led Qin Mian into the thatched cottage, closed the door and left. Du Shi's eyes were red as she looked at Lei Daqiang. Lao Lei, look at Wei Lang. He married a wife and forgot about his mother. Lei Daqiang watched Lei Tie pick up a carrying pole and go out of the entrance door without looking back, his brows were creased. Let it go. The health of Wei Lang's wife is really not good now. Give him 2 days off. Nonetheless, Du Shi obeyed Lei Daqiang. Although she was not comfortable with it, she didn't say anything more. She comforted herself that when the Wei Lang's wife got better, he could do more work. Thinking of this, she no longer insisted. Then, she saw the other 2 daughters-in-law standing around doing nothing and so her anger flared up again. Her eyes were bulging and her face was cold. Although she didn't talk, the anger in her gaze was like a fierce wind blowing towards Zhao Shi and Qian Shi. Zhao Shi and Qian Shi hurriedly took the tools they needed to use and walked out of the courtyard. Qin Mian stayed in the thatched cottage and was at ease after he listened to the silence in the yard. He expressed a few thanks to Lei Tie before he inserted the door latch. Then, he shook the quilt, took out some clothes and 2 pillows from the wooden box. He stuffed them under the quilt and made them look like someone was lying in it. Afterwards, he got into the quilt and entered his magical space. He had no choice but to be extra cautious because the cottage was too dilapidated and full of tiny cracks. It was easy to peek in. His magical space was a heaven-defying existence, so he must be very careful not to let anyone know about it. Since he has transmigrated, it should not be normal for this magical space to come with him, but perhaps because it recognized its owner by their bloodline, the magical space was integrated into his soul and thus, it followed him over here. In the beginning, he was able to obtain this magical space truly by chance and odd circumstances. One night, he was in a depressed mood. After drinking a bit of wine, he went out for a walk to sober up and accidentally saw 2 men beating a black dog in a small forest. There were several vertical and horizontal bloodstains on the dog as it curled up on the ground and whimpered, enduring the pain and sorrow. It was very miserable. So, he ran over angrily, took out his cell phone and threatened the 2 men that he had already reported them to the police. The 2 men were young ruffians less than 20 years old. They got scared by his threats and ran away. The dog looked really bad. He didn't have any experience in dealing with dogs' injuries. He didn't dare to move it arbitrarily. Thus, he called a veterinary clinic and asked them to send someone to deal with it. At the same time, he stroked the black dog's head to comfort it as he said to it that someone would come to save it immediately. The black dog looked at him and whined before it stood up with difficulty and licked the palm of his hand. Then, it opened its mouth, spit out a maroon jade ring before it limped away. He had drank wine at that time, so his brain was a little fuzzy then. He blanked out for a long while before he sobered up when a gust of wind blew. He even thought that he just had hallucinations. But when he looked at the palm of his hand, he did have a jade ring. He was surprised and hurriedly looked for the black dog, but the black dog had already disappeared. It was all very strange. Moreover, the black dog obviously understood human language and was harmless. It not only left the jade ring, but it also put the ring in his hands in an endearing manner. Later in 2012, doomsday scenario became a trendy topic and novels about the end of the world emerged in an endless stream. When he was bored, he read a few such books and became very interested in the portable magical space, and that the portable space of the protagonists in many novels were inadvertently triggered by dripping blood onto an ancient object. Therefore, he cut his finger and let his blood drip onto the ring. To his surprise, it really opened up to a magical space. End chapter. Minwei Qi Nan. Chapter 4. Evil Mother-in-Law. The jade ring turned into a small mole and appeared on Qin Mian's left wrist. The current Qin Mian also had the exact small mole on his left wrist. Maybe it was a coincidence or maybe there was some mysterious reason behind it, but Qin Mian didn't care. What was important was that he still had this magical space. The magical space was a small world of its own with mountains, water, rising sun, and setting sun, as well as a classical courtyard. In particular, there was a spiritual spring in this space. Qin Mian didn't know where the spring came from, but he was sure that there was no end to it. The water of the spiritual spring had a wonderful effect. After drinking the spiritual spring water, his body had become healthy and maintained its good condition. The vegetables and fruits watered with the spiritual spring water all grew pretty well and tasted very good, that it was unimaginable how many times it was better than the goods sold outside. Because 2012 was theorized to be when the end of the world would come, Qin Mian collected a lot of materials to be stored in his magical space, including food, clothing, useful items, and the likes. Not only that, but he also raised a few chickens and ducks, planted a variety of vegetables and fruits, and even planted a few fields of rice paddy and wheat. After all, it was more reassuring to grow one's own food. It was also because the Qin family gave him 5 million yuan as compensation that he had the funds to spend on all these things. Although he had transmigrated now, with these things at hand, he was confident that he would have a good life. There was also a strange thing in this space where it could form a heartstrings knot. When he found a person whom he mutually loved in the future, he could share this space with them where they could both live and die together. Even in this backward ancient era, they would be able to live a beautiful life. After drinking a glass of spring water and watering the unknown flower bud in the flower bed behind the house as usual, Qin Mian left the magical space. Now that he was living in a strange place, he tried to stay in the magical space as little as possible. If he couldn't go in, then he wouldn't push it. He stayed in the room until he heard Du Shi saying to Lei Chuntao that she would prepare the meal. He got up and went to the kitchen to help tend the fire. Du Shi still didn't show Qin Mian any genial expression, but he didn't care. She wouldn't be able to hurt him no matter how hard she stared at him. He even waited for Du Shi's words to reveal some information about this place and time. As soon as Du Shi saw his nonchalant attitude, she became annoyed. Wai Lang's wife, since you've married into the Lei family, you can't be lazy all day long. It's your blessing that Wai Lang loves you dearly, but you can't have a mile after winning an inch just because of it and fail to recognize others' good intentions. Do you understand? She used the spatula to vigorously turn the dish in the wok. The spatula knocked and banged on the wok, as if she was regarding the wok as Qin Mian. Even if she turned the dish fast enough, the dish in the wok still very quickly emitted scorched smell. Are you trying to go against me or something? Why are you trying to make the fire bigger? Du Shi abruptly used the spatula to hit on the kitchen stove and stared at Qin Mian coldly. Do you want to burn the wok through, or is it that you don't want to let the family eat? Ah! Qin Mian was speechless for a while. In the first place, fried eggplants need more oil, but you only used a few drops of oil. It will be strange if it doesn't get scorched. Doing something was wrong, not doing anything was also wrong. He understood that Du Shi was not pleased with him, which only made him more and more confused. If this is the case, why did they agreed for Lei Tie to marry Qin Mian? If you don't salvage this dish, it really won't be edible. I'll go see if they're back. After politely saying that remark, Qin Mian stood up and left. Without waiting for Du Shi's response, he went straight out of the yard. For a moment, he really had the urge to leave, but reason quickly restrained him. His health was not good and his body was only that of a teenager. How far could he go even if he left? He could stay in his magical space until his health became better, but he knew nothing about this world. If there was any taboo or someone discovered the existence of his magical space, he had no choice but to die. There was also the problem of household registration. He would become an illegal citizen if he left in this way. It was unknown how much trouble he would have in the future. He was most worried about whether there was any special reason for the original body owner to get married with that man. If he ran away, would that lead to the Lei family chasing him down? Not far in a distance, a group of people were walking over while talking and laughing. It happened to be Lei Daqiang and the others. Qin Mian hesitated for a moment and stood by the side of the road waiting for them. Lei Tie saw the lad even from a distance and walked 2 steps quickly before he soon came to stand before Qin Mian and looked at him with questioning eyes. Qin Mian didn't know exactly what he was trying to ask, so he simply shook his head and smiled at the approaching Father Lei. "Father, you are all back. I was going to call you all back to have meal." Lei Daqiang replied simply. Lei Xiangren and the others called out eldest sister-in-law. Qin Mian nodded as before. Behind them were several villagers who had also finished their farm work and were returning home. They looked at Qin Mian strangely and smiled vaguely before they walked to another path. Qin Mian stealthily pulled Lei Tie's arm. When Lei Daqiang and the others went in, he let go. "I have something to talk with you about." Lei Tie hinted for them to go inside to talk. Just after the two entered the thatched cottage, Du Shi shrieked, "Wai Lang's wife! Where are you running to goof off again?" Qin Mian sighed. "Forget it. We'll talk at night." He didn't believe that this old woman would let him off until after dark. Lei Tie watched him walk out of the door. He stood still with his thoughts unknown before he followed Qin Mian out after a while. End chapter. Minwei Qi Nan. Chapter 5. Reason. It was not completely dark yet when the Lei family finished their dinner. The shadow of the house and trees were made into dim silhouettes by the remaining sunlight. All peasant families were like this. They tried to eat dinner before dusk so that they could save some of the lamp's oil. Qin Mian, Zhao Shi, and Qian Shi washed the dishes and cleaned the kitchen under Du Shi's hostile eyes. When he came out of the kitchen, he saw that Lei Tie had taken the dark brown wooden basin to draw water from the well. Qin Mian was afraid that the man would wash his feet with him again, so he rushed to the well and scooped a ladle of cold water from the bucket with a wooden ladle and poured it directly onto his feet. After he washed his feet once through, he looked at Lei Tie dully for fear that the man would notice anything strange about him as he shivered inwardly. The water in the well he had just drawn was not cold, but his heart was chilled. Lei Tie paused before he bowed to draw water, still without facial expression as before. Qin Mian went back to the thatched cottage. His sandals were wet and uncomfortable. He simply took them off and let his feet dry naturally. There was no chair whatsoever, so he sat down on the edge of the bed. The inside of the room was very dark and the light from the outside came in through some big and small gaps on the wall, which appeared very miserable. Qin Mian saw an oil lamp on the low table at the head of the bed, but he didn't know how to light it, so he didn't touch it. After a short moment, Lei Tie came in. Qin Mian asked in a low voice, "Is there anyone else outside?" Lei Tie didn't know exactly what he meant but shook his head, walked in and sat down on the bed. Qin Mian thought for a moment before he said directly, "I don't know what happened. I don't remember anything from before. Can you tell me who I am and why I married you? We are both men." Lei Tie turned and looked at him in surprise. Qin Mian looked straight at him with a calm face. "You are my wife. I'm Lei Tie. Go to sleep." Lei Tie got on the bed first and lay down on the outer side. "I'm a man." Qin Mian was a little anxious and asked, "How did I end up married to you? Why did my family marry me off to a man?" Lei Tie didn't speak. The room was too dark that Qin Mian couldn't see his expression. "You are my wife." After saying that declaration, Lei Tie never opened his mouth again no matter how much Qin Mian asked. His breath became long and steady, as if he was asleep. It was no use worrying, so Qin Mian tried to stay calm and sat blankly for a while. When the cold wind blew, he shivered and crawled to the inside of the bed to lie down. There was at least one more thing that he could be thankful for now. LIAN did not force him to exercise his marital rights. Poo-poo. Mian shook his head and drove away the appalling thought. After hesitating for a moment, he dragged the only quilt which covered LIAN to him. The temperature of the body beside him was like a warm stove. It was hard for him to ignore it. He simply didn't stop thinking about it and intended to have a good sleep. After dawn, he must try to find ways to ask about the situation. He lay down feeling much at ease than earlier. According to his estimation, this body was at most 12 years old, basically still a child. In any case, LIAN shouldn't be a brute of a man to really treat him like that. After 2 days, Mian finally learned of his current situation. When he transmigrated, he went through different time and place. He was currently in the era of the Great Xia dynasty and lived in Green Mountain village of Running Water Town. He also became aware of the Lei family's situation. LIAN and LIAN were siblings born of the same father. LIAN's biological mother died in childbirth when she was giving birth to LIAN. 6 months later, LIAN married a second wife, and that was Du Shi. The Lei family had another son who was only a few minutes older than Lei Chuntao, as they were twins. He was studying in the town's private school and came back every few days. Mian had not met him yet. It was a coincidence that the original owner of this body was also called Mian, and it was true that there was some inside story of how he ended up married to LIAN. Speaking of this, he had to say that LIAN was very pitiful. When Du Shi had just married in, she was pretty good to LIAN. But when she had her own children, she was no longer happy with LIAN. If she was even a little dissatisfied, she would either beat or scold him. As the saying went, where there's a stepmother, there would be a stepfather. Du Shi said something bad about LIAN from time to time and gradually convinced LIAN to not care much about LIAN. When LIAN was 12 years old, Du Shi urged LIAN to sell LIAN off to a rich family as a manservant. LIAN couldn't bear it and left home by himself quietly. That was 10 years ago. Less than a month ago, he came back with an ugly scar on his face. It was unknown what happened to him out there. The family asked, as well as the villagers, yet they couldn't get an answer from him. After all, he was still LIAN's child. The eldest son was old enough and his 2 younger brothers were already married. There's no excuse as to why the eldest shouldn't be married. LIAN had been pondering how to talk to LIAN about his marriage. However, with the scar on the face of such a taciturn though handsome man, which girl would fancy him? The matter had then dragged on continuously. Until one day, an old fortune teller came to the village and declared that LIAN's predestined person was a 14-year-old boy who would appear in the woods in the west of the village at a certain time on a certain day in a certain year. If the 2 of them were married, they would enjoy endless glory, splendor, wealth, and prestige, and would even become a blessing to the whole village. But if LIAN married someone else, then the Lei family would be faced with imminent disaster and calamity would befall even on their descendant. As he listened up to this point, Mian's first thought was that this fortune teller must have been hired by someone who didn't like LIAN. Then the story resumed. As soon as the fortune teller's words were out, the Lei family members all turned pale. They would rather believe it than not. On that prophesied day, LIAN took LIAN and LIAN to the forest where the fortune teller had mentioned, and they didn't expect to really see a young lad there. The boy was dressed in rags, lying on the ground and unconscious. The group of 3 hesitated for a moment before they took the boy home. When the lad woke up, he only said that his name was Mian and he had come from a remote town. Other than that, he could only shake his head on any other questions. Because LIAN had been away from home for many years, LIAN felt a little guilty towards him and didn't really plan to let him marry this young lad. It was not a big deal to raise this child that they had picked up. Shouldn't that be enough to avert the prophesied disaster? However, he couldn't bear Du Shi making tearful scene in front of him, saying that it didn't matter for 2 old people to be implicated by LIAN. Even if the two of them lost their lives, it didn't matter. But they couldn't incriminate their other children because of one Lei Tie, right? In particular, Lei Xiongji had no son, Lei Xiongli had not yet married, and Lei Xiongji needed to study as he could perhaps become an official which would bring glory to his ancestors in the future. Moreover, their only daughter was yet to be betrothed. Due to this, Lei Daqiang relented and had Lei Tie married Qin Mian. Qin Mian was ill and homeless. If he didn't agree to marry Lei Tie, he would be driven away. Thus, he had no choice but to agree. End chapter.